Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back. I am James and you are watching Blue Dog Aquatics. Now, as stated in the title, how many fish is too many fish? Today we're going to talk about something that gets brought up a lot. How many fish can I have in my aquarium? Now this goes back and forth on a couple of different principles. The most common one and the most basic rule of thumb is an inch for every gallon. So, for example, 10 inches worth of fish equals 10-gallon aquarium. Now, obviously, if you have bigger fish, let's say angels or swordtails or goldfish, they are going to be bigger, so you're going to need a bigger aquarium for them. Now, the biggest thing with it is if you introduce too many fish into your aquarium, what happens is you have an imbalance and a spike of ammonia. Now, you're like, well, James, you have so many fish in your aquariums. And I'll tell you the result of that. So, the reason why we can have so many fish in this tank is because we're constantly doing maintenance on these tanks. We're constantly doing water changes. We are constantly doing water tests to make sure that our levels are proper. We also use RO to bring down the nitrate and the chlorine levels, or the chloride levels. Every fish puts off a bioload. That's waste. Now, if you have, let's say, 2 fish in a 40 breeder, they're not going to produce a huge bioload. So your filters aren't working as hard. You're not doing as much of a water change. If you have live plants in there, that's going to help suck out the nitrates and the nitrates, or the nitrites. So it comes down to what type of fish. Now, you can have a bunch of nano fish in a 10-gallon tank because they're not putting off a huge bioload. They are itty bitty. So the inch per gallon rule applies very well to this. So, I mean, you have itty bitty little fish that are putting off a very low bioload. We have live plants in here to help counter that. So that is one way to help be efficient with your aquariums. Now, what can happen if you introduce too much too quickly? We have people come in here and they buy 4 or 5 fish and then they're like, well, I want to buy 5 or 6 more. Typically, we don't do it. We tell them to do it in 2-week intervals. So if you're going to introduce, let's say, 4 or 5 fish, give them a couple of weeks in the new tank. Test your water again before you come back and buy more fish to make sure that your levels are either at 0 or close to it. Because when you introduce the new fish, let's say another round of 5, you're going to spike the ammonia level. And ammonia levels that spike can be lethal. Now, another thing to consider too is to have multiple different tanks, because you see we have all of our female guppies here, but we have different tanks of males. We have males there, we have males over here, we have males over there. They get put in different tanks depending on their shipments. We don't want to risk infecting a good healthy tank of fish with something that just came in. And a key example of that is down here. You notice how this tank has nothing except for a beta? This tank used to have about 15 different fish. It had rainbow fish, it had Jack Dempsey's, it had such gorgeous fish. But what happened was we had some Jack Dempsey's that came in that must have had an illness on them, and our quarantine tank was full. We didn't notice anything on them right away, and we didn't have any other open tanks that were due for South American fish. And so we put them in here. We're like, okay, they'll be good. Guess what? This tank crashed. The ammonia levels went through the roof. They had ick. They had some other kind of parasite that we're not even sure of. And so every single fish that was in here, aside from the beta, died. So this is why this is about as real as it gets. I want to make sure that when you're introducing fish into your tanks, that you're being careful, because I don't want you to come in one day and your whole tank is dead. This is also why we are so careful about where we introduce fish, where we get fish from. Fluke accidents like this happen. In 2 years, this is the first time that we've had an entire tank crash. This is also why we don't do, like on our reptiles, we'll do holds or deposits. This is why I don't do holds or deposits on fish, because anything can happen. We can have a tank crash overnight, and that's exactly what happened to this one. And it really sucks, because some of them were some of my favorite fish, but it is what it is. We move on. Now, you may say, well, what do you do to the tank now that it's crashed? Well, what we do is we go in, we did a thorough cleaning of the substrate, we did a thorough cleaning of the filters, we did a huge water change on this tank, and then we also treated this tank. You can see the little marking down here. That marking means that this tank has been treated. So if you ever go into a store and you notice that there's a, let's say right here, not ready next to a fish, that's because either they're under treatment, they just came in, there's multiple different reasons why it is. But this is why you don't want to introduce too many fish into a tank at once. Make sure that you have the space, make sure that you have a backup tank or a quarantine tank, because we don't want you to overload your aquarium and lose all your beautiful fish. So I hope this helped. If you guys have any questions about it, please let me know down in the comments. I'm really happy to say that this channel just hit 4,800 subscribers. That is all thanks to each and every one of you guys. I love you guys for it. It really means a lot. And I can't wait to see where this channel grows and where we go to. If you are tuning in for the first time, we bring you videos just like this each and every week. So please do consider subscribing and hitting that like and notification bell. That way you stay up to date with all of the new fish. With that being said, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope this helped out, and I hope that you learned something from this. We will see you guys next week.